Yo, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to a brand new video. So today we're going for our first 2025 football shoot all the way on the west side of Singapore. So today we're going to be using our Tamron 70-300 f4.5 to 6.3 as well as our Sony A7Cii II, which is currently being used for filming. Later on in the video, a lot of the content will be shot on the iPhone 12 because I do not have an action camera. So the time now is currently 10:24 and we've got to head on over to the west side of Singapore, which is going to take about an hour to 20 minutes. So now I'm going to have my breakfast and then we're going to go on to the bus straight to the west side. So I will see you guys there. So we back in the football field, second half, and they're losing quite badly. So it's going to be very hard to give them the photos. So I'm trying my best. So when they have possession of the ball, it's there's the only time I can actually take the photos. Right, so this is a terrible angle as like it's hard to film football, but this is like the best I could do, honestly. But hopefully in the near future I can get a action camera. But yes. So my camera is very hot right now. And like I'm in the hot sun for almost like an hour and no, not an hour and 30, like an hour 20, and it's like it's quite hot. I just let you know. But I'm quite used to the weather, so yeah. I think I did one of these videos before, but it didn't show the field, so hopefully this time I can get some that shows the field. So something that I found in order to just use a one-handed camera was I just leave it on 200 and it pretty much covers the whole field. Alright, so I'm very sorry for the footage. I thought it would be better, but turns out it was like super hot at the football field. So now I'm going to show you guys how I normally would edit my clients' photos. So a few tips and tricks that I picked up along the way was that if you use the grass to determine the color and the light, you can easily edit your photos. I like to copy paste a lot of my color corrections because it's just easier than editing every single picture over and over again. So use the grass to determine how exposed your photo is. So let's just say I were to reset everything from this section. Alright, so as we can see from these couple photos from this part, these 30 photos, I'm going to use the first photo as an example. So this one is an already edited photo. So the original looks like this and the edited looks like that. I don't go so hard on the editing because it's just like a simple football picture. So just play around with the shadows, the highlights, and the exposure. And then if you want to, you can play with the vibrance a little. But other than that, I do not touch anything under the color section. So once you see that this photo is fairly nice and it's very and the grass is very similar, as you can see here, the grass is super similar on these couple photos. So just copy paste these settings and make sure you don't copy the white balance because it'll just mess up the photo, and then you have to separately just adjust the white balance. But just take all these, and if there's masking, take the masking as well. I take the masking because when I'm doing it for Instagram posts, it's easier for me to edit. So just copy this, and since the grass is this pretty consistent for all these photos, just paste them all, and then you'll see that all these photos here will be around the same exposure. So we take a look, it's all pretty good. Now for these ones you can do the exact same, but if you find that it may be a little bit overexposed, you can always just bring down the exposure like so, and then copy it again and then just paste it into all these. It's that simple. So you just keep doing that for all these photos. If you have 1,000 photos, I think you can easily do that. So now let's edit a few pictures that I quite like for my Instagram. So this photo here is taken at 1 in 1,000 of a second f6.3 at ISO 200. It's taken at a focal length of 264 millimeters. So I've already cropped this photo at a 5x4. It's my Instagram standard for football pictures, and I've already edited how it should look like. All I need to do now is just put one of my presets, not really a preset, but not mine as well. It's from the Kodak E200. So as you can see, when I put that on, it doesn't really look nice. So I'm gonna completely reset all the lights, all the colors. Alright, so it's just gonna look quite dull. Now, first things first, I always like to adjust the curves first. So I'm just gonna do a simple S curve, but not so, it's not going to be so much of an S. And after that, since it's quite dark, I'm going to bring up the shadows to bring up the players' faces and possibly bring up the exposure a little bit and bring down the highlights. And for the white and black, I'm just going to bring it down slightly. So now we've got that. Let's bring up the vibrance a little, but then bring down the saturation to get that filmish look, and then bring down the clarity and dehaze to get that bloom effect, and then possibly put some grain on it as well. So now you have your photo. What I personally like about editing is using the masking tool. So what I like to do for my football pictures is the ground, I like to reduce the exposure because the ground is overly exposed. For the top part, I usually bring up the exposure by a bit and then put more clarity and dehaze, so it looks like the sunlight is coming under and then it's like darkish. So if we toggle the mask, we can clearly see it looks a lot better. Now obviously I don't do this like top part and half part for all my pictures, but if I feel like there's nothing much I can do here, then there's nothing much I can do here. So now moving on to the next photo. So these photos I specifically like to put a little bit more effort into the masking, but in terms of this part, it's pretty standard as usual. Right, so for these photos, I generally don't really use the top part, so I delete that, but I keep the mask on the bottom, so just lower that a little. Now, since Lightroom is pretty smart, you just click on the subject and it should get the person. Okay, nope. Firstly, you duplicate and invert, and then I bring down the exposure by a little to make the player stand out more, and then go back on the player and then increase his shadows, bring down his highlights, and bring up by a little for his exposure. As you can see the difference between that, the player is standing out more, but then it looks kind of artificial. So I like to put a radial gradient on either side, so it can either be on the left side or the right side. So since there's more players on the left side, I'm going to reduce the exposure a little, and then on the right side I'm going to bring up the exposure and then put the clarity and dehaze on that as well. Alright, so let's skip down to a few of the other photos. So something like this would be a great example. So I think what we can do is we can actually just copy and paste the settings, and you'll get it like this. Now I think it's quite okay. Perhaps we can bring that down a little. So these ones, I love the trees behind it. So there's two ways you can do this. First one is the pretty standard one, which I think would look pretty nice on this photo. It looks something like that. That looks pretty sick. Or the second one is we can duplicate it, and instead of having the sky, we have a radial gradient, something like that on the top. Right, so if we compare these two photos, they honestly look both the same, but you can see on the blue guy that his face is wider, but on the left side his face isn't as wide as on the right side. So basically we're emphasizing more on the player with the ball on the left side, whereas the right side is you're getting more of like a real sun, right? So I personally quite like the left side's picture more. So I think that's a lovely picture. Alright, thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to check out my Instagram to view this latest post, and I'll see you guys in the next video.